4. Join me in reciting the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, so welcome, Nat Bond. And you're here tonight on the application of Justin Haas for a self-storage facility that's proposing in the corner of Carroll's Grove Road and Hoosick Road. And while we did receive a digital copy of the information that you provided tonight, I appreciate the hard paper copies. If you want to kind of come to the podium and just kind of review what you have provided, please.
Thank you. Yeah. Good evening, everybody. My name is Matt Bond, Farm Engineering. We're here on behalf of Mr. Haas, presenting a request for zoning variance for a proposed self-storage facility. So we've got two variants that are being requested here at the front, 42 foot, and at the rear, 30-foot variance. We were asked to take a look at the stormwater requirements for the project. As was noted in the town engineer's last review letter, there's a significant increase in impervious area on the site, obviously, compared to the existing conditions. The existing conditions are largely overgrown meadow. So we performed a HydroCAD analysis, hydraulic modeling software analysis, and looked at the requirements of the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation general permit, stormwater permit required for construction activity, and looked at what would be required to add this shown amount of impervious area to this particular parcel, given soil types and things of that nature. So we did provide, apologize, it's not the most entertaining reading. We did provide the analysis of an existing condition and a proposed condition, providing the runoff that would generate from the site. Then we looked at potential stormwater treatment devices that could be employed to meet the permit requirements, one of those being a bioretention basin, and another being a micropool retention basin. And with what's shown here on the site, in this location and some of the other green space that's available, we looked at it and there was enough space to create properly sized stormwater management areas to treat the runoff from the project. So we were informed that that was a major concern of the board to evaluate the site to make sure that there was indeed enough space to treat the runoff, and that's what we looked at. So, are there any questions for the board I can answer at this time?
I have a question regarding the detention basin in regards to the micropool pond. Is that an or situation? Is it one or the other, or is it an and?
Yeah, it would be an and.
Uh-huh.
It would be an and in this situation.
Mm-hmm.
So the bioretention area would be sized to treat the runoff reduction line requirement for the site. Those, I believe it was 2015, DEC brought in the green infrastructure requirements for the stormwater permit. So the bioretention basin would treat a portion of the site and reduce the runoff, and the remainder of the site would go to micropool basin for treatment.
And is that indicated on that design?
So this is the client's fire consultant's map. So the location would be largely where it's shown here now. So they've got 245 foot area that is kind of set aside. Makes sense, it's on the low point of the project, and then it runs down. We certainly want to pump stormwater, so everything runs to that area for treatment. So it would be in that area set aside. So we may have a small basin here or a small basin here, just to treat a little bit of the driveway. But largely, the intent would be to focus stormwater treatment in the area. That's been set aside in that rectangle.
So what it'll be is a two-pond segmented.
Correct. Yeah, portion of the site would go to the bioretention area, and the remainder of the site would go to the micropool detention basin. So luckily, we were able to send it over to town engineer in Goldsteel. He was able to take a look at it I meant to bring copies of his email response, but Chuck, did you happen to see his email?
I emailed it to all the zoning board members.
Okay, excellent, yeah. So he took a positive look at it as well and agreed with our analysis on the project.
So Matt Bond, in your opinion then, with the location of the micro pools, you indicated 2 spots along the Carroll's Grove Road area. Would that change the configuration of the location of the buildings right now?
No,
So the way that it's designed, the micro pools could be fit into those blank areas?
yes. Yep, there's sufficient space here and in the green space to install properly sized basins.
No, I just looking to see what the elevation.
The question, in general, sorry, that's okay. In general practice around detention then, what surrounds the area? Is there vegetation? Is there stone material? What is the surround of the detention basin?
Sure, yeah, so a micropool detention basin would be shaped, it would be approximately 46 feet deep in total. It would not be standing water at that level. That would be during a 100-year storm event, like an Irene event, you would see the basin full from that level, generally significantly lower. Vegetated slopes, grass slopes, a mowable slope for easy maintenance. And then the bioretention area itself would be a basin largely at finished grade. It has a shallow ponding depth. It only holds about 6 inches of water. That would have a mulch layer on top and wetland plantings throughout it. Recommended DEC plantings throughout it. It's one of those features that provides treatment, but also looks nice as well. A little bit of a visual aesthetic to the project. At the outfalls, you see probably some crushed stone, things of that nature to handle during significant flows, so you don't have erosion and the discharge points for this.
How many of these in the past have been built that have just been filled up with phragmites?
This depends on the area. It's flying overhead and depositing the seeds.
So the phragmites are not a hindrance for water cleaning and retention. It's just amphibians can't live in it.
Yeah, so as far as the phragmite, I can't speak terribly to that. Cattails, from my reading, do provide treatment for runoff from the site.
Mhm.
So basins would be sized to handle your water quality volume requirements and things of that nature. Reduce your discharge from the site to the coast level or less. So runoff isn't going to discharge from the site at a higher level than what was there before. As far as the phragmites, I can't speak to all that.
So we were told in previous meetings that there would be a fence around the detention pond. What is around the micro pool?
So the detention pond, from my understanding, there was just kind of a generic placement of the detention pond. So moving to the next step in the design process, the detention pond, what we'd likely go with for detention would be a micro pool. Micro pools, they require fencing if the slopes are steeper than 4-on-1. So in this instance, if we're able to grade it less than 4-on-1, fencing wouldn't be required in that area. And if it's something that the board would like to see, then please by all means let us know. The DC requirements state slopes that are 4-on-1 or shallower, you don't need fencing. If you're steeper, you're like a 3-on-1 slope, and that's all geared towards access to the basin. If someone were to slip down in, they'd be able to get out So it would be a more controlled environment, so someone was walking along, we wouldn't slip down a grass slope into a pond.
Mhm.
So,
I guess the fence would do the same.
right.
And I'm also going to note for the board, earlier questions about the vegetation. This is a commercial site, so the town, there's only the planning board completes its site plan review, will require a stormwater management facilities maintenance agreement that requires the owner to maintain stormwater facilities per the approved stormwater plan. That includes cleaning them out and making sure the vegetation as proposed in the plan is maintained.
Right, thank you.
This has nothing to do with what we're here tonight for, but what's he gonna be able to have on site that's gonna push 350 foot of snow? Because that's what you got between the buildings, you know? And if he's gonna have a loader, yeah, that may work, but
Yeah.
that's a heck of a lot of pushing.
Yeah, I'd imagine probably a loader with the bucket on the front.
Yeah.
It's wide, so you're probably have to do it in phases.
Are there any other questions from zoning board members for Mr. Matt Bond?
Yeah, I just have one. So on the Route 7 side, the longer dimension of the pond itself,
Yes,
obviously that's where the steepest slope is.
yeah,
So does that part along Route 7 have a higher berm to make up for the grading, or how is that gonna look?
correct, yeah. Good now, so we'll likely have a berm shaped on the downslope side, and that's how we shape the basin itself.
And like what Chuck was saying with snow removal, are they allowed to put snow in the retention pond?
Yeah, certain basins, the fire retention area certainly would want to do that, because of plantings in it. But the four bays, so the micro pool would have a 4 bay, that would be an adequate area for some snow. I see they also have they had set aside a snow removal area here as well.
And are there gutters off the buildings that are gonna run to that underground with?
I have to check with the client on that, the gutters, and as far as what directing runoff
Yeah, is
to the
that,
basin.
is the sizing of the pond taking into consideration the roof area of the structures, or is it just paved area?
No, roof area. Roof area, roof
Any way
area.
you slice it, it's impervious, whether it's a roof or it's a,
Correct.
Just verifying that was part of the,
Oh, absolutely.
Calculation.
No, it's a good question. So definitely, everything will be directed to the basins for treatment.
Okay.
So anywhere that pavement is installed, we try to the maximum extent practical, pavement or roofing, capture that, treat it prior to discharge.
Okay.
So yeah, everything for the project, the full SWIP would have to be designed to the requirements of the DEC. So that's, then it would be by the town engineer, certified and stamped and all of that, so.
Question in regards to vegetative screening that would be, is it a part of what the zoning board could put a condition on? And the position of the fence, so what would be your opinion on where you place vegetative screening in regards to the detention pond as it relates to the fence?
Oh, meaning in front of a line?
Yes.
Okay, really, in that instance, it would likely be done to the preference of the board. As far as screening, having the vegetation in front of the fence might give it a little bit more of a natural look. So the fencing in this area, on the detention pond, I see they've got a string of trees shown here. So that would be at the edge of the property, and then any fence necessary could be tucked inside that would revert.
Also, just want to say thank you. The board appreciates the submission of the standard calculations that you provided to us. Sorry, it's so difficult to get here with the traffic.
So my apologies.
Also appreciate your explanation for our questions. Any other things you want to bring to Mr. Vaughn at this time? So the additional information has been placed into the record. It's received today. And I don't hear any other questions from some of the members. Thank you for your time, and I appreciate you coming tonight. A question for the zoning board members. Do you think you have enough information to proceed for deliberation to act upon the two requested area variances?
I do.
Is it comfortable?
I'll take Wayne Bill's
Okay,
advice.
great, yeah. All right. Okay, so we'll begin. We'll note that this is a non-residential seeker review process. And in the application submitted to the zoning board members by the applicant, there's a short environmental assessment form. And under the State Environmental Quality Review Act, the board needs to review that information contained in the environmental assessment form and determine whether, in the board's opinion, there is potential for at least one significant adverse environmental impact from the proposed action. We'll note that the board is in receipt of the standard calculations to meet the New York State DEC requirements. The town engineer, Wayne Bonesteel, agreed with these calculations. And to satisfy this, we would take a motion from a board member, and then we would vote on it. Yeah, so whether or not there is a positive Environmental Quality Review Act, that there is potential for at least one significant adverse environmental impact from this proposed action, that would be a positive, or we can take a negative declaration. So we usually do this with our residential, they're type 2s, so you don't have to make this determination. So which one at a time?
Sure, so as this is a commercial application, if you're familiar with your seeker review. So, as Dan said, there is a short environmental assessment form in the record. And what the seeker regulations require the board to do is, after you've reviewed that information, you've deliberated. If the board comes to the conclusion that there is at least one potential significant adverse environmental impact, you'd adopt a positive declaration, and then the applicant would need to do more environmental review, called an environmental impact statement. The board determines, based on the review of the record information, that there is no potential for significant adverse environmental impact. You'd adopt a negative declaration that ends your environmental review. The important word there was significant. Okay? Seeker doesn't mean that there won't be any environmental impact. The touchstone for seeker review is the potential for a significant adverse environmental impact. So that's the standard that'll guide your decision. And again, it's important that you asked for the stormwater information that was submitted through Mr. Bond, reviewed by the town engineer, Wayne Bonesteel. And there were other things that the board has reviewed on this project, including lighting plan, vegetation plan, things of that nature to address things like potential adverse aesthetic impact, which is a secret issue as well. So, if you have any further questions on that, I'll discuss more, but that's really what's in front of you now under seeker is adoption of a positive declaration or a negative declaration.
Andy, can I ask a question?
Sure.
If we adopt a negative, but then the planning board comes back with a positive, how does
All right,
that?
that's a fair question. So this is an unlisted action. It's called an unlisted action under the seeker regs. You're conducting what's called an uncoordinated environmental review, which is allowed for unlisted actions. So if this board adopts, for instance, for sake of discussion, a negative declaration, and then the planning board during its review, because it will need to make a secret determination as well, adopts a positive declaration, then that in essence supplants your negative declaration, and the applicant will be required to do a full EIS. Okay? That's the way the seeker regs work. So in an uncoordinated review situation, which this is, if there's a subsequent positive declaration, it impacts the seeker review for all the agencies, and it would impact this board's action on the variances. Okay? Another way of saying that, John, is your neg deck is not binding on the planning board. They can go ahead and make their own, and they have to make their own secret determination.
That was my question, but if we declared a positive and they declared a negative,
Once you declare a positive, that's binding, and the applicant would need to do a full EIS, and all the agency review would be on hold until the EIS has been completed.
just want to word it correctly, but I'll make a motion to grant a negative declaration of secret.
Remember second. Second. Thanks, Patricia. All in favor?
Aye.
So the board has adopted a negative declaration for seeker in your uncoordinated review process. So then we'll move on to the review of the standard elements for consideration of the area variances. Board is asked to explain how no undesirable change would be produced in the character of the neighborhood nor detriment to nearby properties created by granting the area variances. So I think we've spoken about fencing. That came up in the public hearing comments, and it was addressed by the applicant. The applicant proposing a black chain link fence around the property and to include vegetative screening. Minimize the visual impact to the neighborhood. And if this continues and the board finds that we're in a position where we could come up with conditions, it could be addressed then, the kind of vegetative screening that the board would put as a condition. And we've always thought that arborvitae is deer candy, so we would want something that would be more deer resistant, such as spruces, or, and we can talk about that later. The board was also very insistent on the design of the building, what it would look like, the colors. Not the red, right. And just to clarify, so what's being proposed is a change as it was brought out, this is an overgrown vacant lot to become a self-storage facility. So whether or not that change is undesirable. Also spoke about the lighting. Also came through the public hearing comments. It was addressed by the applicant.
I feel that if the color of the building, one of the two, well, it gave us three options, but,
You can, maybe you left number 2, I think, which
Off-
is a solid
right,
color
the
design.
off black or brown, whatever it was, and with the proposed plantings that he has, that he provided us with the trees that are planted 6 to 8 feet apart and the other bushes that he has put in and fencing. I don't think that it would have a negative impact on the character of the neighborhood.
Then the board is asked to explain why the benefits sought by the applicant cannot be achieved by some method feasible for the applicant to pursue other than the area variance. He spoke about that it would have to perhaps eliminate one of the buildings that he's proposing, which may then not make the proposal a good return on his investment.
And also the size of the retention pond that he's required to have. Had an impact on requiring the variance.
The board is asked to describe whether the requested area variances are substantial. We'll note that this is a 2.7 plus or minus acre parcel in a business-like overlay zoning district. 2.5 of that is proposed to be disturbed. There are 2 setback variances that are being asked for. The front required is 75 feet, was being proposed is 42. That's a relief of 33 feet. And then the rear was being required is 50 feet, and proposed is 30 feet, 20 foot relief. I guess we can note that in regards to the front setback, the front neighbor is New York State Route 7. There's no request for side setbacks where there's a neighbor on one side and Carroll's Grove to the other. And then the rear setback, where there is a neighbor, there's also like an access road.
But that's not a vacant lot.
The behind the access road.
Yes.
The board is asked to explain how the proposed area variance will not have an adverse effect on physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood or district, noting that the board will adopt a negative declaration for the non-residential secret review process. It was as part of the record review. We had a letter from the town engineer agreeing to the engineering calculations that were made by Met Bond. The applicant has a lighting plan where the lights would be mounted, the solar lights would be mounted on every other day in downward facing position and height of 8 feet. Their hours of operation, which would control the traffic entering and leaving the facility. I believe they're 8 to 8, is that 8? That's correct, yeah, 8 AM to 8 PM. There would be no increase in noise post-construction with the operation of this facility. Nor a need for any public services. And then lastly, then lastly, the board is asked to explain whether the difficulty is self-created, noting that the consideration is relevant but shall not necessarily preclude the granting of the area variances. Let's see, yes, this is pretty obvious that the applicant knows it's self-created, as he's told the board he has not purchased this property in question. Waiting for the results of the requested area variances. There's no other discussion. The board will weigh the balance between the benefit to the applicant, weighed against any detriment to the community at large, or any individual in particular, determining to grant the requested area variances. And noting that in the consideration of granting a variance, the board has the right to impose conditions that came up through our discussions at previous meetings. We did speak about hours of operation. We spoke about the lighting illumination, this discussion about the vegetative screening, the fence, the landscaping that would be at the Carroll's Grove Road entrance. We spoke as being compatible in respect to the rural nature of the surrounding area. And any other conditions that have been covered. Of the design of the building. And Andy, the question, so this was the design that was submitted to the board. So we would grant the area variances as it looks in the design. So, and that would be then up to the planning board to redesign or reconfigure the location of the buildings.
Right, so one thing for the board to consider is there is a proposed site plan in front of you that identifies the building location, okay, detention pond location, and then identifies the setbacks that Ann went through regarding the variances. One reasonable condition would be if you're inclined to act and grant the variance, would be if there is a change in the building layout that affects the need for the variance, meaning the variance would need to be increased, that they would need to return to the zoning board to seek an amendment to the variance. One thing to consider is that if there's a change in the proposed layout of the planning board that would reduce the need for the variance, then they'd be within that. So they wouldn't need to come back to this board. But if it required an increase in the amount of the requested variance, then a reasonable condition would be, they would need to seek an amendment from this.
Thank you.
So do we need to make a motion?
We do, so we need to make a motion whether to approve or deny the requested area variances. So it's for the front setback and for the rear setback. And then if you're so inclined, we could add some conditions onto that motion. If a member would second that, and then we'd all vote on it.
I'll make a motion to approve the 2 area variances with the following conditions. That the solar downlighting that the applicant proposed, which is on page 22 of his handout. That the landscaping and tree planting he proposed on page 3 is used with existing materials. And his proposal,
Pardon me, just real quickly. So if there are 2 designs on how the tree planting should go.
it was the plant in a line of 4 to 6 feet apart,
Okay, thanks, not that.
option 2 on that page. The applicant's presentation of the color scheme, which is a monotone color, his recommendation on page 4 of his handout. The color of the chain link fence be dark or black. And then if the site plan is changed due to building size or dimensions, that the applicant has to return to the ZBA for amendment.
And then change, just to add to, John, that the change would be an increase.
Increase, yes.
In the variance. And then I would just add, we had a comment from Matt Bond about the location of the fence in regards to the trees. And Mr. Bond thought that it would be best for the trees to be in front of the fence. And that would be particularly in regards to the front setback. And I think we also mentioned the hours of operation that we can possibly add as a condition, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. And also in one of the designs, there was some attractive landscaping at the entrance to Carol's Grove. And keep in mind with the rural nature of the surrounding area. Are there any other conditions that come up in our discussions that weren't enumerated at this time?
I had a question about, when you're talking about color schemes, so John, you're referring to color option 2, that it was identified as, it was brown on brown or /bronze. as Mr. Haas described it?
Yeah, he was actually pushing for that color at the last meeting.
Did he say what color the roof would be?
He did not.
This looks like the roof.
You see the fascia's matching, but if you look at color of the picture on the front page, the roof is definitely a white color,
Right.
so.
I would suggest or propose that the roof color with matching would make sense. And just to get clarification, because, I mean, there's a white roof on that, that's gonna make it stand out. It's not gonna make it as aesthetic.
Chuck, would that limitation, if he wants to add solar panels on there, would that cause a problem with that addition of solar panels on it?
The building would have to be designed for that. Or there would have to be modifications made to it so that solar panels would be able to be put on there.
Would a sign, a business sign, be a separate scenario that goes through the, okay?
The applicant would have to apply for a sign to make the building permit.
Okay.
And we wouldn't necessarily see it unless it needed the variance.
Okay.
Have a motion with the, I'm sorry?
That's okay, I just want to confirm the conditions so they're very clear in the record. So 1, solar downlighting required for the applicant's submission, 8 feet on the building every other day. 2, tree planting as shown as option 2 on the applicant's submission, 4 to 6 feet apart in a row. Is there a type of vegetation?
Yeah, it was using deer resistant
You said
materials.
Deer resistant.
Okay. 3, the color scheme is option 2, as shown on page 4 of the handout, the brown, bronze color, roof color to match. 4, chain link fence, I'll add installed per site plan in a black or dark color. The condition that if there's any change in the site plan per the planning board review that would increase the size of the requested variance, that an amendment to the variance is required from this board. Landscaping or trees to be placed in front of the fence along the Route 7 corridor in the area of the front setback variance. Hours of operation, 8 AM to 8 PM. What days? Is that Monday? Is that 7 days a week? And that landscaping at the entrance on Carroll Grove Road per the applicant's submission. Is everything I have?
Yes.
Okay, second motion. Thank you, Tricia. All in favor?
Aye.
So the requested variance is granted. So Chuck, would you kindly inform the applicant of tonight's proceedings, please?
Planning board. That's where you're heading next, Matt, Thursday at 7 PM.
Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Just on the planning board, to confirm with the planning board chair, rather than on the agenda. And I'm not even sure it was discussed as tentatively, but yeah, it'll be up to the planning board chair. Okay? Thank you.
Are there any other items from your business that like to be discussed at the special meeting? Otherwise, I'd make a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting.
No new business thus far.